My name is Louise Pryor, and I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks. That's how long I had until I walked down an aisle in front of everyone who had ever watched me shrink myself into something easier to swallow. 3 weeks until I married the only man who had ever looked at me like I wasn't an accessory to someone else's success. And 3 weeks until my parents finally learned what it felt like to have a future taken out of their hands and spent on the child they loved more. I was sitting on the living room floor when the memory hit me again, sharp enough to make my throat tighten. A worn leather photo album lay open across my knees, the kind my mother treated like a sacred family record, pulling it out whenever guests came over, smiling as she flipped through the pages like proof of her perfect life. Except the version inside it was never mine. In the center of the page was the photograph from Tyrese's championship day. My younger brother, front and center, beaming like the sun. His soccer trophy was raised high, catching the light just right, as if the universe itself had decided to spotlight him. My parents stood on either side of him, arms wrapped proudly around his shoulders. And me? I was there too. Technically. A sliver of my face appeared at the edge of the frame, half shadowed, like someone had tried to include me and then changed their mind at the last second. My thumb traced the outline of Tyrese's trophy. That image had haunted me for years, because I remembered that day vividly. It was the same afternoon I discovered my college savings account had been emptied. Not low, not mismanaged. Drained, gone. Like it had never existed in the first place. I snapped the album shut, harder than I meant to. The sound echoed through the apartment, sharp and final. From the kitchen, I heard the gentle scrape of a spatula against a pan, followed by Patrick's voice. "Louise," he called, "have you finished the seating arrangements?" I swallowed the burn behind my eyes and forced my voice into something that almost sounded normal. "Almost," I replied. "I'm just trying to figure out where to put my parents." There was a pause. Then footsteps. Patrick appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was wearing the navy t-shirt I'd stolen from him years ago, the one that still smelled faintly like laundry soap in home. He studied my face the way he always did, quietly, carefully. "You know," he said gently, "we could just not invite them." I let out a small laugh, but there was no humor in it. "No," I said, "they need to be there." Patrick frowned. "Louise." "They need to see everything," I cut in, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. My hands weren't steady, but my resolve was. Patrick stepped closer and crouched beside me. "Are you sure that's what you want? On our wedding day?" I looked past him toward the window, where the city lights were beginning to flicker on, one by one, like someone quietly lighting a fuse. "It's not just our wedding day," I said softly. "Not for them." Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. I didn't have to check the peephole to know who it was. When I opened the door, Paris stood there holding a bottle of wine and wearing the expression she reserved for emotional emergencies, half concern, half I knew this was coming. "Okay," she said, stepping inside. "Your text sounded like the opening scene of a true crime podcast." Patrick gave her a polite but strained smile and retreated back toward the kitchen, though I knew he was listening. Paris kicked off her boots and dropped onto the couch like she owned the place. "Spill," she said. I walked to my desk and opened the top drawer, pulling out the envelope that had been burning a hole in my life since yesterday. Cream-colored. Thick paper. Elegant gold lettering. Paris sat up instantly. "Oh no, that's expensive paper. Nothing good ever comes on expensive paper." I handed it to her. Her eyes widened as she read the name. "Aunt Stella?" she whispered. Patrick's head snapped up from the kitchen. Paris looked at me. "The Aunt Stella? The one your parents pretend doesn't exist?" "The very same," I said. She flipped the envelope over like it might explode. "Why is she contacting you now?" "She wants to meet me for lunch tomorrow," I replied. "Says she has an opportunity to discuss." Paris stared at me, then glanced toward Patrick, then back again. "Your parents are going to lose their minds if they find out," she warned. I poured wine into 3 glasses, my hands steadier than I felt. "They're too busy fawning over Tyrese to notice what I'm doing," I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. As usual. Patrick came over and sat beside me, his hand finding mine under the table. Paris leaned forward. "Okay, talk to me." I hesitated. Saying it out loud made it real in a way that still hurt. But Paris and Patrick were the only 2 people who had ever made me feel like I didn't have to earn the right to be heard. So I told them. "Did you know," I said slowly, "that my parents took $50,000 from my college fund?" Paris froze. "To pay for Tyrese's training program in Europe?" Patrick's jaw tightened. Paris's mouth fell open. "And yesterday," I continued, my chest tightening, "I found something else." Patrick squeezed my hand. "Tell her." I pulled out the folded letter from my desk drawer. The paper was yellowed slightly at the edges. Dated 2015. I found this in my dad's old office files, I said. Paris read the header. Her face drained of color. No, she whispered. I won a full scholarship, I said quietly. To architecture school. Paris nearly choked on her wine. Patrick closed his eyes like he was physically restraining himself. They never told me, I continued. They let me believe my college fund was gone and that loans were my only option. Paris shook her head in disbelief. Why would they do that? I laughed once, short. Short, sharp, ugly. Because they didn't think architecture was appropriate for me, I said. They wanted me to teach, something safe, something feminine. Patrick's hand tightened around mine. All those nights I worked double shifts at the cafe, I said, standing up because sitting felt suffocating. All those years of student debt, and I had a full ride waiting for me. Paris stood too, her eyes glossy. So what are you going to do? I looked down at Aunt Stella's invitation again. That's what tomorrow's about, I said. Stella was always different. They called her the black sheep. Patrick tilted his head. But you think she might be the only one who actually told the truth? I nodded. My phone buzzed on the table. Mom. I didn't even need to read it, but I did anyway. Don't forget Tyrese's game is this Sunday. The whole family needs to be there to support him. I turned the screen toward Paris and Patrick. Paris's jaw clenched. Patrick exhaled slowly. 7 years after graduating, I said quietly, and I'm still invisible. Another text arrived. Have you started looking into teaching positions yet? It's not too late to change careers, dear. I stared at the words until they blurred. They still don't see me, I whispered. Patrick wrapped his arms around me from behind. Whatever you're planning with Stella tomorrow, he said softly, I'm with you. Paris nodded. Me too. I walked back to the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I used to think if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, they'd finally be proud of me. But now I understood the truth. They never would. Not unless I made them. I opened my laptop and pulled up my old bank statements from 2015. The withdrawals. The dates. The proof. Next to it, I placed the hidden scholarship letter. 7 years of receipts. 7 years of silence. 7 years of betrayal. Paris watched me carefully. Remember when I said revenge is a dish best served cold? I closed the laptop with a soft click. Well, I said, meeting her eyes, it's time to take it out of the freezer. Patrick rested his chin on my shoulder. Are you sure? I looked at our reflection in the dark window. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. My phone buzzed again. One last message from Mom. Family always comes first, Louise. I smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. Oh, Mom, I whispered. You have no idea how right you are. The cafe Aunt Stella chose wasn't anything like I expected. No white tablecloths. No pretentious menu with words you had to Google. No quiet judgment humming in the air. Instead, it was a small corner place, tucked between a used bookstore and a flower shop, filled with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh coffee and warm bread. I arrived 15 minutes early. She was already there. Louise, Stella said, standing as soon as she saw me. Her voice was steady, confident, like she'd never once apologized for taking up space. You look just like your mother did at your age, she added, then paused, studying my face more closely. Except the eyes. You have the prior fire. I didn't know how to respond to that. We sat across from each other, sunlight cutting through the window between us. Stella wore a crisp blazer over jeans, silver hair cut into a sharp bob. She looked accomplished, grounded. Everything my parents had spent years convincing me she wasn't. I'll be honest, I said carefully. I was surprised to hear from you. She smiled, then slid a folder across the table toward me. I've been following your work for years, Louise. I blinked. You have? The Sustainable Housing Project on 4th Street, she said easily. Brilliant design, elegant and efficient. My fingers tightened around my coffee cup. You know about that? I know about all of it, Stella replied. Your honors graduation, the Innovation Award last year, and the fact that you paid off student loans that never should have existed. My pulse started racing. How do you... Because, she said calmly, I was on the scholarship selection committee. The words landed like a physical blow. I voted for your application, she continued. When the acceptance letter came back unopened, I knew something was wrong. The waitress arrived with our food, unaware she was interrupting the moment my entire past cracked open. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos of my projects, articles highlighting my work. She'd been watching, quietly, consistently. All these years, I whispered. Stella's gaze hardened. Your parents thought silence would erase your potential. I knew it wouldn't. Why now? I asked. Why reach out after all this time? She leaned back slightly. Because I'm retiring, and I need someone to take over my firm. I nearly choked on my sandwich. Your firm? Jackson Sustainable Architecture, she said. My head spun. JSA was one of the most respected sustainable design firms in the region, the same firm I'd been trying and failing to land an interview with for months. I'm offering you a partnership, Stella continued. 50% ownership immediately, full transfer in 5 years. I stared at her. There's a catch. She didn't deny it. The catch is your parents will fight this, she said. They'll tell you you're not ready, that it's too risky. They may even suggest Tyrese should buy in instead. They can't stop me, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. Stella slid one more document across the table. This is a detailed accounting of every dollar they took from your college fund, with interest. I scanned the final number, 887,000. My stomach dropped. That would have covered everything, I whispered. Yes, Stella said gently. Which is why I'm offering you more than a business partnership. I'm offering you restitution. My mind raced. The wedding, I murmured. Stella's lips curved slightly. Exactly. They expect me to play the perfect daughter, I said, to finally fall in line. And instead, she said, they'll receive a legal demand for repayment. They'll disown me, I said quietly. Probably, Stella replied. Are you ready for that? I thought of every family dinner where my achievements went unmentioned. Every teaching job posting my mother forwarded. Every moment Tyrese was celebrated while I stayed silent. When do we start? I asked. Stella handed me a pen. Right now. 6 months later, I was standing in a glass conference room leading my biggest presentation yet. And if we adjust the solar panel orientation here, I said, pointing to the model on my tablet, we can increase efficiency by 30% without compromising the design. The clients nodded, impressed. After they left, Stella clapped once. You've exceeded every expectation. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Mom, we need to discuss the wedding menu. Your father insists on traditional options. 2 weeks until the wedding. The intercom buzzed. Louise, your brother Tyrese is here. My heart stalled. Tyrese stepped into my office looking uncomfortable in his coaching gear. Nice place, he said quietly. Really nice. What are you doing here? I asked. They don't know I'm here, he said. I saw the announcement. You and Aunt Stella. Do you know what you're doing? He asked. I'm building something, I replied. Something real. Tyrese looked down. I didn't know about the scholarship. But you knew about the money, I said. They told me you agreed, he said, that you wanted to help. I walked to the window. Did you ever ask me? Silence. What are you planning for the wedding? He asked. You'll see, I said. As he left, Stella returned. He suspects, she said. But he won't warn them, I replied. Why? Because for the first time, I said, I saw my brother, not their golden child. My phone buzzed again. Mom, family always comes first. I smiled as I slid the legal papers into my drawer. 2 weeks until showtime. 1 week before the wedding, my parents insisted on a family dinner. Not a suggestion, an announcement. Mom framed it as final planning, but I knew better. Whenever she wanted control, she wrapped it in the language of concern and tradition, like a velvet rope around a cage. They're nervous, Patrick said as we drove to the restaurant. They can feel you slipping out of their grip. I slipped years ago, I replied. They just refused to notice. The restaurant was the kind of place my parents loved. Quiet, expensive, dimly lit enough to make secrets feel respectable. Mom was already seated when we arrived. Her wedding planner binder clutched against her chest like armor. Dad sat beside her, posture stiff, eyes sharp. Louise, darling, Mom said, standing to air kiss my cheek. We have so much to go over. Patrick pulled out my chair. Good evening, Lucy. Carl. Dad nodded at Patrick without smiling. Still time to reconsider that prenup, son. Family money needs protecting. I didn't look at him. What family money? I muttered. Mom shot me a warning look and flipped open her binder. Now, the venue. The church called again. The venue is final, I said, signaling the waiter for wine. Everything is. Her pen froze midair. That's not how things are done in this family, she said tightly. The waiter arrived, mercifully breaking the tension. I watched Mom reorganize her papers, color-coded tabs snapping sharply as she moved them. I've adjusted the seating, she continued. I moved your Aunt Stella to the back corner. We can't have her making a scene. Stella stays at the main table, I said calmly. She's my business partner. Silence. Dad's knuckles whitened around his water glass. Business partner? He repeated. What exactly does that mean? It means, I said evenly, I'm co-owner of Jackson Sustainable Architecture, have been for 6 months. Mom's binder slipped from her hands, pages scattering across the floor. That woman has poisoned you, she snapped. First architecture, now this. When will you stop fighting your natural path? My natural path? I laughed. You mean teaching? Or maybe staying home and planning dinner parties? Louise, Patrick murmured, but I was already standing. Did you know, I continued, that Tyrese came to see me last week? Leave your brother out of this, Dad barked. Why? I shot back. Because he might tell me how miserable he is, how he never wanted to be a coach? Mom's face went pale. That's not true, she said quickly. We invested everything in his career. My everything, I corrected. Patrick stood abruptly. I need some air. I followed him to the terrace, my pulse pounding. They still don't see it, I said, pressing my face into his shoulder. They still think they did nothing wrong. Are you having second thoughts? He asked gently. I shook my head. I'm just scared. Some things need to break, he said quietly, like buildings with rotten foundations. Inside, I could see Mom already reorganizing her papers, pretending nothing had happened. Dad was on his phone, probably calling Tyrese. Paris appeared beside us. Your mom's talking about changing the flowers again. Let her try, I said. The florist only takes instructions from me. And Stella called, Paris added. The papers are ready. My stomach twisted. 1 week. 2 days later, Mom posted it online. So blessed to be planning my daughter's perfect traditional wedding. Can't wait to welcome her back to the path God intended. Hashtags and heart emojis followed. She's setting the narrative, Stella said flatly when I showed her. She invited 30 more people, Paris added. Every conservative family friend she knows. She's building an audience, I realized, so she can play the heartbroken mother. Stella nodded. Then we changed the timeline. Change how? I asked. The documents will be delivered during the ceremony, she said, right after you say, I do. That's public, Paris said. Exactly, Stella replied. That night, instead of attending dinner with Mom and the reverend she'd invited to guide me, I turned off my phone and opened my laptop. I started writing. Every scholarship they hid, every dream they dismissed, every dollar they stole. By the time I finished, my hands were steady. 3 copies. 1 for Mom, 1 for Dad, 1 to be read aloud. Louise, Stella said softly after reading it, this will destroy them. No, I said, sealing the envelopes. They destroyed themselves. 3 days until the wedding. 3 days until the truth exploded. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and unforgiving. Sunlight streamed through the hotel window, illuminating every detail, every choice I'd made that my mother had tried to undo. Paris adjusted my veil with careful fingers. You look powerful, she whispered. The dress wasn't what Mom had wanted. No lace-heavy sleeves, no suffocating neckline, no attempt to erase me. It was modern, clean, sustainable silk that flowed instead of constrained. A dress built for movement, not obedience. Through the closed doors of the chapel, I could already hear the hum of arriving guests. Mom's voice carried above the others, warm, practiced, unmistakably proud. The proud mother of the bride, the woman who had spent my entire life sanding down my edges and calling it love. 5 minutes, the coordinator announced. Stella appeared beside me, elegant in her maid of honor dress. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The lawyer's in position, she said quietly. Your parents have no idea. Paris peeked through the door and smirked. Full house. Your mom really outdid herself. Good. The bigger the audience, the better. The music started. Not the traditional march Mom had pushed for, but the modern string arrangement I'd chosen. The doors opened. Dad stood waiting, jaw tight, eyes flicking over my dress with barely concealed disapproval. Last chance, he muttered as he offered his arm. We can still stop this nonsense. I rested my hand lightly on his sleeve. You're right, Dad. The nonsense ends today. As we walked down the aisle, whispers floated around us. She finally came to her senses. Lucy must be so relieved. Gave up that architecture phase, thank God. I met Patrick's eyes at the altar. His smile wasn't for show. It was steady, certain, real. Dad released my arm without meeting my gaze. Mom sat in the front row, wedding planner folder resting neatly in her lap, her smile fixed and ready for cameras. Tyrese sat beside her, stiff in his suit, eyes shadowed with something like dread. The minister spoke, but my focus narrowed. The lawyer slipped quietly into the front pew. If anyone has reason... Mom's hand twitched. Speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence stretched. Patrick squeezed my hands. I do, I said clearly. I do, Patrick echoed. Then by the power... Actually, I said, turning to face the congregation, my voice carrying before the minister could finish. I have something to say. Mom's smile froze. Dad half rose from his seat, then stilled when Stella stepped closer to me. Many of you are here today because my mother told you I was returning to a traditional path. I unfolded the letter. She told you I was being saved. She's right about one thing. Today is about salvation. My own. The lawyer stepped forward, envelopes in hand. When I was 18, I continued, my voice steady, my parents drained my college fund to finance my brother's sports career. Gasps rippled through the chapel. They hid my full scholarship to architecture school. They told me I wasn't suited for the life I wanted. Tyrese stared at the floor. Today, I'm not just marrying the love of my life, I said, nodding toward Patrick. I'm reclaiming what was stolen from me. Mom tore open her envelope. Her face drained of color. This is a legal demand for repayment, I said. Every dollar, with interest. Dad surged to his feet. You ungrateful. That's not all, I cut in. I turned to Stella. I'm also announcing my partnership in Jackson Sustainable Architecture. I'm now co-owner. The whispers turned electric. Mom stood abruptly. You planned this? You turned our daughter against us. No, Mom, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. Security shifted at the aisle ends. Patrick stepped forward, his voice calm but unyielding. You don't get to control her anymore. I turned back to the minister. Please continue. As we were pronounced husband and wife, Mom collapsed into her seat, sobbing theatrically. Dad stood frozen, fury radiating off him. But none of it mattered. I kissed Patrick. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The reception buzzed with fractured energy, celebration colliding with scandal. As I stood near the cake, Tyrese approached. Louise, he said quietly, we need to talk. Patrick squeezed my hand. I'll be right here. Tyrese led me to a quiet corner. There's more, he said. The money, it didn't all go to training. My stomach dropped. They used some of it to cover Dad's gambling debts. The floor tilted beneath me. They'll do anything to stay in control, Tyrese whispered. If this goes to court. Dad appeared, face dark. That's enough. Is it? I asked calmly. Or should I tell everyone where my college fund really went? Mom rushed over, panic breaking through her mask. Please, she begged. Let's talk privately. Family? I gestured to the watching guests. You invited the audience. Tyrese stepped forward. She's telling the truth. Silence fell. Dad looked between us, seeing it for the first time. He'd lost both his children. You have 24 hours, I said softly. Repay me, or I file charges. The first dance music began. Patrick held out his hand. As we moved onto the floor, I watched my parents retreat to a corner, their perfect image in ruins. The war wasn't over, but the truth was finally out. The check landed on my desk with a soft, almost apologetic thud. I stared at it for a long moment before touching it. Every dollar they'd taken. Every year it had cost me. Plus interest. Mom sat across from me in my office, her designer purse clutched in both hands like it was the only thing holding her together. The woman who used to command entire rooms with a smile now looked small, controlled, cornered. There, she said, voice tight. It's done. Are you happy now? I picked up the check, turning it over slowly, studying my father's signature at the bottom. This was never about happiness, I said. It was about justice. She scoffed. Justice? You destroyed your family for justice. No, I replied evenly. You destroyed it for control. Her eyes flicked around my office, to the framed awards on the wall, the architectural renderings spread across my desk, the glass window with my name etched cleanly on it. Louise Pryor, AIA. This, I continued, is who I've always been. You just refuse to see it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. A knock interrupted the silence. Tyrese stepped in carrying a battered cardboard box. Found these in Dad's study, he said, setting it down gently. They were tucked behind old tax files. I lifted the lid. Inside were my childhood architecture competition certificates, sketches from middle school, high school awards, the scholarship letter, all the things my parents said had been lost. Mom's face crumpled. Tyrese! He sat beside her, not touching her. I quit coaching yesterday, he said quietly. I enrolled in a literature program. Her breath caught. But your father... He can't blackmail me anymore, Tyrese said. Not after the truth came out. I pulled out one of the certificates, a Sustainable Design Award from 8th grade. This was never about what was best for us, I said softly. It was about what was easiest for you. Mom stared at the paper like it was a foreign language. I can't fix this, can I? She whispered. No, I said honestly, but you can learn from it. I handed her the certificate. She took it with shaking hands. Stella knocked once and stepped inside with Patrick. The Thompson contract is ready, Stella said, then paused when she saw Mom. Oh, I can come back. No, I said, standing. She was just leaving. Mom rose slowly, clutching the certificate to her chest. Your father won't accept this, she warned. I know, I replied, but for the first time, that doesn't matter. After she left, Tyrese let out a long breath. Think it's too late to become a writer? He asked. Never too late to become yourself, Stella said, squeezing his shoulder. Patrick wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I leaned back into him, watching Tyrese and Stella talk animatedly about programs and possibilities. This was my family now. Chosen, honest, free. My phone buzzed on the desk. Dad, you'll regret this. I deleted the message without replying. Old threats had no power here. Stella spread the Thompson contract across my desk. Ready to build something extraordinary? I glanced around the room at my husband, my brother, my aunt. Then I picked up a fresh sheet of paper and started sketching. Actually, I said, smiling, I have an even better idea. A space that housed both an architectural firm and a writing workshop. A place where dreams weren't buried. They were nurtured. Tyrese grinned. Partners? Partners, I agreed, shaking his hand. The sun dipped low outside the window, casting long shadows across the office. Somewhere, my parents were probably still trying to reclaim control they no longer had. But here, in this space built on truth, their power couldn't reach us. Patrick raised his coffee cup, to being who we always were. I lifted mine to meet his. To new beginnings. And for the first time in my life, the future felt entirely my own.